As you can see nationally, President Donald Trump maintains a 2.1% lead over Vice President Kamala Harris, which is quite similar to the Trump versus Biden numbers. However, how will these two candidates fare out in each and every individual state? In today's video, we will find out. I'm going to start off with President Donald Trump's safe states here, so Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Montana, Nebraska with its 1st and 3rd districts, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Missouri, Indiana are all considered safe states. Additionally, Alaska, South Carolina, Iowa, and Ohio, 4 states that President Trump did not carry back in 2020 by safe margins, are all considered safe. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris has her safe states: Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, the District of Columbia, Maryland, Delaware, Connecticut, Vermont, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, as well as Maine's 1st Congressional District, and as well as the state of Illinois. That brings Donald Trump up to 148 Electoral College votes, and Kamala Harris up to 139 Electoral College votes. We're going to start off this map with filling in the state of Nevada. Nevada is a state that has produced very good Republican results in recent polling. Trump has led Joe Biden in the state of Nevada in polling averages by around 5 points for essentially the last 12 months. And Kamala Harris is actually doing even worse than Joe Biden, his boss, losing the most recent Insider Advantage poll by double digits, 50% to 40%, which is a significant margin. Furthermore, in 2022, Republicans saw significantly optimistic statewide results in the state of Nevada. Not only did they unseat the incumbent governor, Steve Sisolak, they also unseated the incumbent lieutenant Democratic governor, who is Elizabeth Cano Burkhead, by pretty substantial margins. This all paves the way for a likely Republican characterization in the state of Nevada. And now going to the state of Arizona. Democrats did see relative success in 2022 in the state of Arizona. However, in 2020, what we saw was that Joe Biden was also able to win the state by 0.3%. However, the most recent poll here, conducted by Redfield and Winston Strategies, shows a 3% lead for the former President Donald Trump, here 46% to 43% in favor of President Trump, putting this into the lean Republican characterization. Now we go to the state of Colorado, a state that President Biden won by 13.5% over President Trump back in 2020. However, the state is mildly in play for the Republican Party after the fact that Joe Biden is only leading Trump in the polling aggregate this time by single digits. Additionally, in the state of Colorado, this is relatively speaking a more suburban state with a pretty substantial white population. Those two groups of voters are generally what Kamala Harris really lacks for the 2024 election. This definitely puts the state at a much more competitive position than what it did in 2020. Nevertheless, because of how significant Joe Biden won the state over Donald Trump back in 2020, the state is still considered likely for Kamala Harris. Now going to the state of New Mexico. Recent polling has shown that the state of New Mexico is certainly in play for the Republican Party. After all, Trump is only losing to Biden in some of the polls here by 1 to 2% if you look at some of the recent polls in New Mexico. Now, we don't have really polls head-to-head between Trump and Harris, but we could expect a similar phenomenon. Furthermore, back in 2022, Republicans had a mildly good performance in the state of New Mexico, where incumbent Democratic Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham only defeated Republican challenger Mark Ronchetti by 6.5%. This was not a very impressive margin, considering the fact that Joe Biden won the state over the Donald Trump by double digits, making the state of New Mexico right now, according to the limited amount of information we have, in the lean Democratic column. Now we go to the state of Texas, a state with 40 Electoral College votes. Now we don't have polling here between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, but we do have some polling between Biden and Trump, which showed that Trump had a 8.6% lead over Joe Biden. The big problem for Democrats are these Hispanic counties in the Rio Grande Valley. Sure, Biden lost the state by 5.6%, which is honestly quite applaudable for a Democratic Party candidate, but honestly, Democrats were expected to do much better than this back in 2020. You see, even though Hillary Clinton lost the state by 9, she did very well in some of these Rio Grande Valley counties. For example, in Webb County, Hillary Clinton got 74% of the vote in a very Hispanic region, while Joe Biden only carried 61% of the vote here in a county with a pretty decent population. This happened consistently throughout the state, where Democrats simply do not have a pathway in the state in 2024. Right now, I'm giving Donald Trump a likely characterization, though it could move up to safe. Now going to the state of Florida. The most recent poll here conducted in the state of Florida shows President Donald Trump up against Vice President Kamala Harris here by 8%, 47% to 39%. This is remarkably higher than what Joe Biden's margins against Donald Trump was in the state of Florida back in 2020. Biden lost the state by 3.3, which was considered a disastrous performance for the Democratic Party. However, in 2024, they're expected to do much worse. Notably, in 2020, the Democratic former governor of the state of Florida, Charlie Crist, lost to Republican incumbent governor Ron DeSantis by nearly 20%. Florida is simply no longer a swing state, and the state is currently characterized as likely for the Republican Party, boosting Trump up to 235 electoral college votes, already more than his 2020 final count, and we're still not even close to filling in this electoral college map. Next up, in the state of Georgia. Georgia was a state that Joe Biden won in the 2020 general election. However, it's looking increasingly more unlikely that Democrats will also win the state in 2024. In the most recent Emerson College poll surveying 800 voters, Trump leads Kamala Harris by 2.2%. Furthermore, there are additional pieces of evidence that Republicans will probably win the state back in 2024. In 2022, Republicans swept nearly every single statewide office in the state of Georgia. Republican incumbent Governor Brian Kemp won against Stacey Abrams, the Democratic challenger, by 7.5%. Additionally, Republicans won every single statewide office. We're talking Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, Agriculture Commissioner, Insurance Commissioner, Labor Commissioner, School Superintendent, and Secretary of State in every single one of these offices. And we're really talking about a significant amount of Republican voters in the state of Georgia. Again, right now, that 2.2% lead for Trump may not seem significant, but the average is far better for Trump than that one poll. Georgia right now is lean for the Republican Party. Now, North Carolina here, we don't have many number of polls here, but we can look at the Trump versus Biden polls, which suggest that Trump has an aggregate lead of about 5% over President Joe Biden. And I don't think Kamala Harris will do any better than that. She'll probably end up running pretty flat with Joe Biden. Now, in 2022, Republicans also had decent performances in the state of North Carolina, at least in terms of the U.S. Senate race, where Ted Budd defeated Democrat Cheri Beasley, the former Supreme Court Justice of the state of North Carolina, by just over 3 percentage points. I do expect right now, based on polling and my own expectation, that North Carolina is a likely state for the Republican Party, which puts Trump at 267 electoral college votes, which is still significantly ahead of Kamala Harris, who is stuck at 154 electoral college votes.
Unleashing that intel power. Nice.
How did you finish so fast?
Magic.
AI magic.
Now, next up, in the state of Virginia. Virginia is a state that voted for Joe Biden over Donald Trump in 2020 by more than 10 points. At face value, this should be a no-brainer for the incumbent president and his party. However, polling in the state of Virginia put Joe Biden's lead at just 1.3% over Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris is not expected to do much better with the state. After all, most of the voters in the state are from suburban areas where Joe Biden is probably going to have a stronger grasp than Kamala Harris. Right now, however, we don't have a lot of polling between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, but what we do see is some context here. For example, Republican Glenn Youngkin was able to win the state of Virginia in the governor's elections back in 2021 over Democrat Terry McAuliffe by doing very well in the suburban areas. Glenn Youngkin, for example, lost the county of Loudoun to Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat, by just 11, while Trump lost it to Joe Biden by 25 points. What we're seeing consistently right now is that polling has the state at very close margins, which I could possibly end up agreeing. Right now, Virginia is just a tilt margin for Kamala Harris. Now going to the state of New Jersey. New Jersey, again a state that is supposed to be a no-brainer, is now heavily in consideration. New Jersey voted for Biden by 16 points back in 2020, which would again make it seem like it's not a state that's particularly competitive. However, there are some indications the state will be competitive in 2024. First off, Philip Murphy, who is the Democratic incumbent governor from the state of New Jersey, defeated Republican Jack Ciattarelli in that state back in 2021 by just over 3 percentage points. This was a state that Republicans were hopeful they could make essentially within 10 points, but they end up making it well within 5%. Furthermore, polling in the state of New Jersey, though there's no real aggregate, shows the fact that Trump and Biden in some of these polls were virtually tied, if not the fact that Trump was actually slightly ahead of Joe Biden, making the state of New Jersey right now, polling right now, actually kind of favoring Donald Trump in some of the latest polls by around a tilt margin. That puts Donald Trump to 281 electoral college votes, and with that, he wins the presidency. But there's still many states left to fill in, which means that Trump can easily expand his margin. Now next up in the state of New York. New York is a state that is generally heavily Democratic, a state that voted for Joe Biden over Donald Trump in 2020 by more than 23%. However, the most recent poll conducted by so-called research suggests that Kamala Harris is only 11 points ahead of Donald Trump. Now, this is a phenomenon that has been going on for several years now. Kathy Hochul, the Democratic incumbent governor of the state of New York, defeated her Republican challenger, Lee Zeldin, by just 6.4% in the Empire State, suggesting an overall shift in the state towards the Republican Party. Right now, New York is only in the likely Democratic column. Now going to the next state here, the state of New Hampshire. Interestingly, if we look at the New Hampshire Senate race back in 2022, the state was actually less competitive than the New York governor's race, despite the fact that New Hampshire is traditionally a much more competitive state. Now, in the most recent poll conducted here, showing that Democrat Kamala Harris is up 49% to 43%. This is one of the few states on this map that you'll see that Kamala Harris is polling quite consistently to Joe Biden's numbers back in 2020. The state in New Hampshire right now is in the likely Democratic column. Next up, going to the state of Maine. What we're seeing in the state of Maine is that Joe Biden won the state by 9 points over Donald Trump in 2020. However, polling has consistently suggested a close race between the two candidates in a rematch. Although we again don't see any polling between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the state, what we see is that Joe Biden's only up by 2.2% against Donald Trump in the polling aggregate. And in fact, I'm actually going to have to give the advantage here to Donald Trump because one of these polls only had 65 registered voters, which is a relatively concerning sample, and showed Joe Biden up by 17. Obviously, I'm not buying a type of data as inaccurate as this. So I'm actually going to say right now advantage to Donald Trump for Maine's at-large vote by a tilt margin. In the 2nd district right now, I have no choice but to characterize it as a safe margin because the one poll that came out in this district showed Donald Trump up 20% over Joe Biden. Now we go to the state of Minnesota. Minnesota is a state where we do have a poll suggesting that Kamala Harris is up 3% over Donald Trump in the most recent aggregate. Although that margin is larger than Hillary Clinton's 2016 numbers, it's remarkably lower than Joe Biden's 2020 numbers, where we saw that Biden defeated here Donald Trump by more than 7 points. A remarkable difference between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden is the fact that it looks like that Kamala Harris will not have as much suburban appeal in counties like Anoka County, Dakota County, Washington County, and even a county like Hennepin County, while simultaneously, Trump's numbers in the rural areas are expected to further increase. So, yeah, I'm going to put the state of Minnesota now in essentially the lean Democratic column based on the most recent pollster. Now next up to the final few states on this map, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. But before that, I'm just going to give Kamala Harris Nebraska's 2nd district by a tilt margin, just because Biden won the district by 6, but that Kamala Harris is significantly underperforming Joe Biden in 2020 across the board. Now going to the 3 Rust Belt states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Now, 3 states are generally considered the election deciders in recent political history. However, what we see right now is that even if Trump loses all 3 states, he's still going to win the presidency right now with 284 electoral college votes. Now, first off, in the state of Wisconsin, the most recent poll here conducted by Beacon Research shows that Donald Trump is up against Kamala Harris by a single point, which puts it in the tilt Republican characterization, or this type of bronzes color. Now, the problem for Kamala Harris is not that she's significantly underperforming Biden, but because Biden only won the state by 0.63%, and the fact is everything is going wrong right now for the Democratic Party. It's looking exceedingly difficult for Democrats to be able to win the state, and as of right now, just based on the fact that Trump will get insane rural turnout, it looks very and highly improbable that Kamala Harris will win the state of Wisconsin. The second state on this list here is the state of Michigan. In the state of Michigan, the most recent poll suggests that the Republican candidate Donald Trump is up against Kamala Harris by 3%, 49% to 46%. This poll was in part sponsored by Red Eagle Politics. So I'm just going to put this right now in the lean Republican column. Now, if you look at the state of Michigan, you see that Republicans have more room to end up falling. Essentially, Biden won the state by 155,000 votes over Donald Trump. However, the problem here right now is because there's a lot of Arab Americans around Detroit who heavily turned out for the Democratic Party, who are reluctant to support any Democratic candidates at all in 2024. Additionally, young voters are also pretty frustrated with the Democratic Party right now. As a result, it's looking quite unlikely as of right now that Democrats are going to win the state of Michigan, and in the lean Republican characterization. Now, the next state here on the list is the state of Pennsylvania. Right now, the most recent poll again suggests a 2.2% lead right now for the former president Donald Trump over the vice president Kamala Harris. Trump was shot in a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, which is right here. Generally, when you're engaged in an event in that type of state, you're going to see higher turnout in that region. In this case, you're probably going to see higher turnout for Republicans and for Donald Trump in the rural areas of Pennsylvania. Additionally, Democrats don't have a lot of room to fall here, about 75,000 total votes that Democrats could afford to lose. Additionally, Philadelphia County, essentially the blue center of the state, has been trending increasingly more Republican over the past few decades, and rapidly escalated that trend back in around the last 10 years. As a result of that fact, I do believe right now Pennsylvania, as well as the polling, is a lean state for the Republican Party, puts Trump at 328 Electoral College votes to Kamala Harris at 210 Electoral College votes. In summary, the polling right now is predicting a Trump landslide with 328 Electoral College votes to Kamala Harris, who is just at 210 Electoral College votes. Trump is expected to win the popular vote and even states like New Jersey right now based on polling. He's also heavily favored in many of the Rust Belt states, as well as some of the southern states that Biden won, most notably the states of Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. A lot would have to go right for the Democratic Party to win this election, if they can even win it at all, due to Biden's lackluster approval rating, due to the border crisis, and inflation, and several other issues. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.